way or another with Mark Johnston's 5 core beliefs about colors. Johnston is himself a reductionist about colors. But what Johnston does is to put forward precisely in this list of 5 propositions the pre-analytic view of colors, which any account of color is attempting to explain. And they consist of 5 propositions. 1, paradigm. Some paradigms of red really are red. That is, a paradigm being an example, the acquaintance with which could give you the concept, would lead to your mastery of the given color term. As an aside, I have grave problems with the color taupe. I don't think there is too many things are taupe, right? I think taupe is a state of mind and not a color. I think it's a very high class way of saying brown or something like that. But I may not be right about that. Anyway, back to the paper. So in other words, the fundamental truth about paradigm is that some color attributions are correct. Some of our beliefs about colors are true. An error theory about color is not in play. 2, explanation. Something's being red explains why it looks red, why it gives us that particular content in our experience. 3, unity. Red has a unique location in the space of similarity-exclusion relations among the colors. It's got a unique place. If we have a color wheel, it's going to have an exact spot. That's the problem with the dispositional view of colors. There is no unique space. That same space is covered by lots and lots and lots of different but indiscernible reds. 4, availability. One can form justified beliefs about the redness of an object on the basis of visual perception. That is, sometimes you can justify your belief that something is red by looking at it and seeing that it's red. You might say, I would say, and seeing its redness. And then finally 5, and this is the important one. It's now called revelation. Nothing theological about it. It's simply that in the first version of Mark Johnston's, his own version of his the 5 noble truths about colors, as it were, it was that the complete nature of the color is given in our visual experience of it. The more modest version from Gert is a complete understanding of what red is can be given by an experience as of something red. As I said, Mark Johnston's own view about this is that no theory of color can incorporate all these, thus making color properties like Mackey's moral properties queer. Not that there's anything wrong with that, right? That is, are you all familiar in ethics with Mackey's argument that moral properties, like being good, are queer properties? At least they're puzzling somehow. Well, what Johnson's argument is basically that since all 5 of these cannot be true at the same time, then color properties are also queer in the same way. It's just something uncanny about them. Therefore, Pyne.
Is that what he says? Give him the Pyne treatment?
Well, he said he's a physicalist about colors. Physicalist reductivist theories like 1, 2, and 6 satisfy paradigm and explanation. They strenuously deny availability and revelation. And they have, as we've seen, real trouble with 3. Dispositional reductivist theories, like 3, 4, and 5 on the first page, satisfy paradigm and explanation. They also satisfy availability. They go different ways about 3, as we've seen, and they have real trouble with 5. The real trouble with 5 is, can something look like a disposition? Right? Can you just, what constitutes our acquaintance with the dispositional property of something? Are you acquainted with the dispositional property fragility when and only when the vase breaks? That is, it's fair to say that we can be perceptually acquainted with manifestations of dispositional properties. But then some dispositionalists would go on to say, well, yeah, colors are just dispositions. When we are seeing the color, all we are seeing is not merely the manifestation of the disposition, but the disposition itself. I think a case can be made that there's one theory on this chart that in fact satisfies Mark Johnston's modified version 2 list of the 5 core beliefs about color, and that's 8. And it's the only one that satisfies them. Therefore, we have a very good argument for thinking that colors are as 8 describes them. The position for this view is sometimes called the simple view of color. That's what John Campbell calls it. He's one of the defenders of this view. Some of you guys are reading Berkeley's Puzzle by John Campbell. John Campbell was known as a color primitivist. That is a primitive view of color. That is, colors are basic furniture of the world. With that, I'll leave it. The floor is open. Well, that went well. Russell.
Could you say a word, and then I'll have to leave, but could you say a word about how Descartes' view and Locke's view in number 5 is or is not a physicalist view? Colors are perceiver-dependent but hybrid properties. To have a specific color is to have some intrinsic feature by virtue of which the object has the power to appear in a distinctive way.
Yeah, Locke's account seems to be straightforwardly causal. That is, there are some primary qualities in the object itself which cause our visual experience, our color experience. I think Descartes wants to say that, but I don't know how he can, because causality is a physical notion, and it doesn't span the gap. I mean, that's a central problem with Descartes in general. The problem with any causal theory of perception generally, though, whether it's primary qualities or secondary qualities, is you have the physical properties of objects causing our experiences. All right, let's say surely there is a difference. Tillotson, provoked beyond endurance by my, anti-physicalist recalcitrance and my anti-naturalism, hits me with that camera, thereby causing a red image to appear, to have an experience of a red image. Well, okay. Does that make the camera red? Of course not. It's got to be caused in the right kind of way, right? It's got to be caused by, we attribute the redness only when it's caused in the right kind of way, but does he have the resources to make the distinction, to give us a coherent story about how those properties cause those visual experiences? So that is a causal theory of perception. Since there's always going to be a fundamental difference between a cause and effect, presumably what we would want out of perception is that our detection of colors, our detection of any sensible property, is going to be more than merely causal. I mean, the causal story just is, you're just looking in the wrong place. Now, Locke goes on to say, well, the difference between primary qualities, the difference between primary qualities and secondary qualities is that when the squareness of an object causes us to have an experience of squareness, the experience we have resembles the property that causes it. But when something causes the experience of red in us, that experience of red does not resemble anything in the object that produces it. And at that point you say, gee, when you're in a hole, you really ought to stop digging. I mean, how can we make the judgment of resemblance at all? Since resemblance is something that is only going to take place within contents that we have perceptual access to. And according to Locke, given his assumption of the causal theory of perception, we have no direct access to the properties themselves. All we have is the causal results. Those causal results go on in our visual and cognitive, in our perceptual and cognitive systems. All right. In other words, what we want out of a theory of perception is that our senses, our perceptual apparatuses, are the property detectors of the properties that they're detecting. Now, there is a difference between red and square in the sense that we have other tests for something's being square. But the fundamental test, the way we make attributions of color, is simply by the experiences they give us. But again, it's simply to fall into Stove's worst argument in the world to say that, well, therefore, the experience they give us is in our head and not in the object. We have no grounds for saying that. And interestingly, it seems to be a very common, heck, all of us fall into it, right? All of us fall into the worst argument in the world. Galileo was here. Galileo, along with Democritus, was kind of the worst. What Galileo wants to say about colors is that they are completely subjective, that they exist only in light. Right? The only properties that objects have are those Platonic properties. So, at least Locke, well, Descartes at any rate, had the good grace to say that redness really is a property of the object. It's just a dispositional property.
Trying to get my head wrapped around this. Thank you. This is a lot of good information. To go back to the water example, you said that unlike with cases of dihydrogen monoxide or water, scientific explanation won't tell us exactly what colors are. Is that because, I guess my question is, why is that distinction like that? Because we can use electrolysis and we can discern that there's two hydrogen, there's oxygen, but that doesn't tell us about their subatomic equipment or any of that. We're just taking it at that. Whenever we have the equipment to start peering into the brains, if you will, a little more mature in our neuroscience to say, this is the way that this produces this color. It seems you seem to be implying that that still is a part of the disjunctive set that still won't come together to give us, well, what the color is. I'm sorry, I'm really just trying for some clarity in between all of that. I guess my question is even when the science captures maybe what the independent user phenomenon of color experience is, you're saying that that description is not, it's necessary but not sufficient in giving a description of colors.
How would we know that we have super duper neuroscientists with super duper equipment giving a complete account, it's giving us a complete explanation of all of the physical properties of the surfaces and their reflectance properties and the dispositional. You're all countenancing dispositional properties as physical properties, right?
Right.
Right? I mean,
Disposition is a way
a
something
dispositional property can be a physical property. That is, it can be a property that is describable in the terms and concepts of physics. I mean, we do talk about perfectly elastic collisions in physics, right? Elastic is a dispositional term, is it not? You know, to be elastic is to absorb none of the energy in an interaction, but to reflect it